Hey Grant, how you doing? You're the founder or the creator of Chats for Drinks on TikTok. Here you are. This is what you look
Yeah,
like in real life. So welcome. This is that CMS guy. How are you doing today?
yeah, I'm pretty good. Can't complain. Life has many good things, so we've got to look at the positives, you know. So
Yeah. So
I
you're
guess,
you're just
yeah,
talking about your children.
mm, yeah. I don't see them. I don't really hear from them. They've become quite brainwashed. Um, Went from being a great dad to, you know, you're not seeing them really. And every time we had time, there was always an issue. Always there was another issue, another mountain to deal with, and eventually, I think the last piece was now last year when my son was going to move in with me, and she insisted he stays with me only 4 days because I think he was adamant to move completely. So she insisted 4 days and three, and then it was this issue and that issue, and then he just didn't come, you know. So and now he stopped talking to me, and I understand why. He's probably feeling quite guilty, and he's, rather blame me than blame anyone else. But that's what it is, you know. My daughter doesn't talk to me. I haven't spoken to her. Her last message with me was, "Don't contact me." It's months ago, and I haven't seen her in 2 years. You know, I popped by her, dropped something off her to her mother's house, and her mother, I think, called her and told her to reverse and leave. You know, so it's not encouraging relationship. It's not building them up. It's not helping them. It's not helping me. So that's what it is.
So what?
So,
When did this all start, Grant?
well, we split in 2017. We had an, you know, we I've been struggling with depression and anxiety since most of my life. I've had a light bit, but I think being in a toxic relationship didn't help me.
Yeah.
2014, I found out that we'd sold a house in South Africa.
Mm.
She'd started spending money here behind my back, and that meant I started going to work. I was very upset when I found out, and she apologized, said she wouldn't do it again, and it started making me uncertain. And then I found out she was emptying our savings a few months later. So it
I
broke
mean,
me.
what sort of figures are we talking about there? Is it a large sum of money or just a small fortune? What are we talking about?
No, it was £400 to £800 a month. You
Well,
know,
that's no
it just
small sum, is it? Really, that's quite a lot, really. Yeah.
it wasn't the money; it was the betrayal that was the
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I think often with. I sort of classify myself really as one of those targeted parents. Is targeted parents are always, I was always a lot more black and white about, the more you are dishonest, the more I'll put lines in place. Okay, well, you need to prove your trust again. You don't just automatically get trust again when you've done something wrong.
Mm.
And I think the more I put those lines in place, the more she sort of wanted to keep moving them,
Mm.
and that
Moving the
issue became an issue.
goalposts, so to speak.
Yeah, I'd always changed. We just moved country. We'd only been here a few months. We're trying to get the kids to settle in. We didn't have a huge budget. I was earning 5 times what she was earning. All the balls were on me, and now she's blowing money. I'm
Yeah.
like, I appreciate you want to spend money, but can we, at least talk about it? And the thing is, the money had come in. She hadn't even told me the house had sold when the money came in. That was like, why do you do that? So
Mm.
that it was always issues like this. The whole marriage was one lie after another, and then just treatment here, and then this family member wouldn't talk to me, and it was always about her family. It's the one thing I've noticed with men never notice is we were
Yeah.
always visiting her family.
Yeah,
Always, always,
I can relate to that. It was the same for me as well. Yeah.
yeah, always her family, and we hardly ever saw mine. And the other thing was she had no respect for my mother either. That was a big identifier for me. I look back now, would never talk when she left the country. She tried to get in touch with us. Say, can I see the kids for one last time? She's too busy.
Mm.
But and those things too for me are very big indicators to men. If you're going to look for someone who's going to be toxic towards you after divorce, those are big indicators for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. Anyways, it wasn't actually the money. It was more the betrayal. There was issue that meant I started going to work, worrying what she was up to at home. And I started having issues at work. So I was going to work stressed, coming home stressed. Eventually it all imploded. I had severe depression, became quite suicidal, and I spent years, over 5 years, trying to, well, actually no, longer than that, almost 9 years trying to get through just daily suicidal thoughts.
Were you aware of what was going on, or did you have an understanding that you might be in some form of like narcissistic dynamic? Was you aware of that? No.
I didn't know what narcissism really was at the time. I only found out because I got to the point I was severely depressed. They put me onto a 2-year. It was I initially did a CBT course, cognitive behavior therapy, and then that's when I started finding that there were 10 different types of borderline personalities. One of them being narcissism, others being paranoia, and so on. There were a few others. And this is exactly what you accuse, and that's one of the things, of course, you accuse me of having a borderline personality, implying I'm a narcissist, you know?
Yeah, that's the truth. They accuse you of it, but it's actually them. Yeah.
Yeah, well, they accuse you of what they are guilty of, you know, because they want to remove the spotlight from them. So you are the problem. And because it's so easy to blame men in modern day society, you know, we're all narcissists, all men are. As soon as you split up, we're the bad guys.
All men are narcissists. All of them.
But men, you know, men are all cheats, but we're all sleeping with the same woman. You know.
Yeah, well, well,
yeah.
I hope not.
You know, the problem is every time every man is a cheater and everything, but we also must pick out the exact same ones.
That's all because some of these women, they're all sleeping with the same, like 10% of men or whatever it is. And so
the guys into themselves.
Yeah, so they accuse all men of being you know, the same type of behavior, but it's clearly not true. Anyway, so yeah.
I mean, it's got to do with alpha males and other guys wanting to be alpha males, but we'll get into that discussion another time. You know, so we split up. 27. It eventually got to a point I lost jobs. I wasn't mentally coping with life. I wasn't really allowed friends. My friendships still dissolved because I was known as grumpy because I was incredibly unhappy. I'm generally a happy guy. I was a church going guy generally. But by the time I got to that point,
can we just talk about that? So you went to church. You had a belief. In what belief did you have?
Yeah, I was Christian. Yeah, I was in the Church of Christ. I was, you know, and it was her insisting on trying to be a friend of my ex-girlfriend that really drove me over the edge. You know, I just didn't want to have contact with the person. Just it caused a big rift, and I just left. I'd had enough. You know, the church had done enough. My perspective was enough, and that just threw me over the edge. And then I was a bit lost for a while. I had to find my own identity, you know. She remained going to church, you know, and obviously which didn't help my reputation in the church, you know, because I looked like the bad guys left, and you know, she's saving the day, you know. So
did you feel that you had any support in the church then?
No, I didn't feel. I mean, I've tried to contact them since we split up, and I've always had a negative response, you know. So 2 people in particular I try to contact to help me, and they've just both taken their side, you know.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So yeah, it's fun. It's, you know, I spent 10 years in the church giving, serving. I went on hundreds of dates, served, you know, gave at community services and that. And when it came down to the crunch, you know, they bailed on me. That's sort of
was this back in South Africa then?
In the church,
yeah.
We moved over here 2017. I've been out of the church a few years by then, but not quite a few, about 10 odd years.
So where do you sit with that now? What's your perspective upon religion as a whole?
I've become a lot more agnostic in terms of that. I'm still sort of wandering around in my thoughts about what it is, you know. So I do believe there is a higher source. I'm just not convinced of where that is right now, what that is. There's an energy that runs the universe, undoubtedly, and you can tap into that energy whatever way you like. But I'm not sure what that is. And I've actually been in meditation, where psychological meditation, where I went out to before I was born, and I met a being that was like Jesus. Wow. So I've been in And I can tell you, heaven is not what people think it is. It
Mm.
is absolutely not. I have a different perspective on
So
what heaven
what do you
is.
think heaven is then? What's heaven for you then?
Heaven is, if you take, heaven is an incredibly, you feel completely happy, safe, at peace. Everything is good. It's those best feelings that you can possibly have, about life, and it's good. The whole thing is good.
I hope so,
So
because one day I want to go there. So yeah, I hope it's great. If somebody can give me some been there themselves and give me like the lowdown on what it's like up there, that's great. Yeah. So in terms of like you're still like because you've been through what you've been through, it's made you question some things. Is that right to say?
yeah, quite a bit, yeah.
No.
And yeah, it's, I think we all go through stages in our life. Uh, Religion is one of those things I'll figure out in time. Right now, I'm just not sure of what it is.
I think it made
So
me question. I was thinking, hold up a minute. I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus. I believe in the cross. I believe in salvation, and I take personal responsibility for my own failings. However,
yeah,
where's the support for me? Why is it that only one perspective is being pushed here? Why is it only one narrative is considered to be the correct narrative? What's going on here? Where's the support? What aren't we supposed to be loving, forgiving, merciful people who are sharing the love of Jesus? What's going on here? So yeah, I can really empathize with what you're saying there. I was thinking, well, God must be really angry with me because everybody else hates me. Everybody that I knew suddenly turned their back on me. They all think I'm a whatever they thought. So yeah, I can totally relate to that. I've come down a different side to it, but yeah, it's not been when you go through something like this, it really does make you recalibrate and rethink a lot of different things. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
so
There's a proverb. There's a proverb that says, um, what a man will seem right until the other man comes forward and tells his story. I'm paraphrasing. So people always buy into the first argument, and that's something I used to do when I used to see dads who didn't have the kids. I thought, oh, he must have been terrible. He did what? Oh, that's just, how could he? Oh, I don't want to talk to him. That's and I've had that from other guys who we used to hang out with. They see me in the car park, they scurry along and don't talk to me. Because their wives talk to my ex and they get an impression. So they come to listen. I heard this about your wife, ex-wife's, your wife said this. What's no, she's, oh, okay. Well, then they get a, but the problem is we're so happy to keep our wives happy. We just don't really get involved. Instead of walking to her and say, listen, did you already do that? Did you cheat and did you beat her up? Did you? No. Okay. Well, she's lying then, isn't she? We don't do that. We don't give men the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, well, let me go over one-on-one chat with the guy and just find out. We don't do that, and we need to do that. So I don't do that anymore. I don't listen to the first story I hear. I'm like, okay, well, until I've got his opinion, as far as I'm concerned, that's hearsay.
yeah, society has gone down a very dark tunnel when it comes to it used to be a case of you are innocent until proven guilty, and that is a standard that England, I think, used to stand upon as a bedrock and also an example for the rest of the world to raise up to. But in recent history, it just seems that now it's a case of if you are accused of something, well, that's all you need. That you don't need anything else. You don't need the other person's side of the story. You don't need the facts. You don't need evidence. All you need is somebody saying, this person did this to me. And that's it. That's all that's needed. That's not justice. That's something else. That's something dark and twisted.
Yeah, the world is very quick to judge and quick to react.
Yeah.
And it's a very sad thing, but anyways, it's what it is. So talking about things. So 2017, my ex and I, she left the house one night. We had an argument. She claims I assaulted her. I was very upset. I was down, depressed. My wife was leaving me. I never used to drink before I met her. I was now drinking daily. I'm not saying it's her fault. I cannot say I never drank. There was a time before, but for years I'd been, never had any alcohol at all. So I'd started drinking wine every day and eventually moved on to brandy. And by the time, with depression, you get so depressed, you want an out. And I got to the point that I was so depressed, I wouldn't get out of bed until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. In fact, I tried to get out of bed when none of the family were downstairs. It got so bad. So eventually I had to come up with a plan to get myself out of depression because I knew she was doing something. She was planning to leave me. I got this feeling when I heard that she was spreading rumors about me, whatever. So eventually I got myself through this. We had an argument one night and, we had a tussle over the phone. She pulled it, hit herself in the chest, fell onto our sofas, which actually leather. She never got injured. She had this, I think she had a mark, but she rushed upstairs, said she's leaving, took the kids, and then insisted my son was sleeping. My daughter was quite upset. She'd overheard it. My son was sleeping, took the kids, left the house. I insisted on taking the keys back, then made an accusation and said I'd assaulted her and both my children. Wow. I'm like, well, what kind of person I am if my son was fast asleep? Made an accusation. A year later, she said to me, I needed a case number for the court because she wanted to get a non-molestation order. In fact, there was someone who, when the police arrived, they'd said they'd overheard the conversation. She never actually accused me of assault. The police had extended it and made it look a lot worse so they could try and get access to the house and give her the case number she needed. So it all played in against me. She'd been antagonizing. I'd actually left the house for a bit before that for a few weeks and then found out she was doing so. I moved back in and she just, she'd antagonized me, got me to that point, and then it all blew up in my face. And then that's when it started. I didn't see my kids initially for 2 weeks. She got a short period of non-molestation. But the day she issued it, and men need to know this, the day she issued it, she made a mistake. She went to a park, and I said, I'd like to see the kid. She said, okay, I'll meet you at the park. And she sat within 2 meters of me. And she was so terrified of me that she needed a non-mole, but sat within 2 meters of me. So the judge threw it out of court because he said to her, was he ever violent? She said, no. Was he violent towards the kids? No. He said, well, I don't even know how you got this far. So, he threw it out. And then the thing, they wanted to go to a wedding in South Africa. I said, they're not going to be safe. Let me travel with them. She didn't want that. She said, okay, well, based on that, they're not going to South Africa for the wedding. I don't even know why the wedding was held there, but it was. They ended up, and then that became an issue again. My daughter started hating me because she didn't go to her sister's wedding. And I'm like, well, that's actually not really to do with me. But I was in quite a dark place mentally. So I didn't even simulate.
Talk us through that. What was going through your mind? What was going through your emotions at that time?
I was quite mentally broken. I'd come to the UK. I'd secured my job, 60 grand a year plus extra commission, company car. I was doing incredibly well within about 6-7 months. I did what most people couldn't do. A year later, I'd lost that job. And I started blaming myself. And it was because of the issues we had, the money issues. I felt like I just became more and more suicidal because I'd had issues in life where this had happened. In the relationship, I'd lost my friendship with my best friend had fallen apart again because of the conflict. My relationship with my sisters had fallen apart. My brother had stopped talking to me, and although there were always my sort of personality had changed. I'd become a different person, and I went from that happy guy to unhappy all the time. I was just miserable, But
yeah,
I tried to remain emotionally consistent. With outbursts, but I couldn't bottle it. I was so upset. I wasn't happy being with her. I was raising another man's kids who wasn't financially contributing. Monthly, I'd get I need 5,000 or 10,000 rand from you this month. I said, well, can we sit down with the budget? No, I've already worked it out. You know, I couldn't see any of my friends. I wasn't allowed to be, no, I couldn't talk to any of the women I knew. I couldn't talk to any guys because I was now a married man. I could only talk to married men, and only really couples that she approved of. So by the time I got to the point, I'd failed and I was broken, mentally broken. I failed again. And I was in a very dark place. Honestly, seriously, honestly started planning my suicide, started collecting tablets. And when she left, I drank. I couldn't find the rope. I was in plan to hang myself outside the window, but I couldn't find the rope. And eventually found it about a week or so later. But on that particular day, I called emergency. I went to work for that day. I was only working a few days a month. Went to work and I said, I don't want to go. And they said, no, okay. So I went. I ended up leaving that VW in Seven Oaks and absolute tears, broken, cycled home and I phoned the emergency services. I can't be alone right now. Because if I'm alone, it's not going to work out.
Yeah.
And I went home and I was looking for the rope and luckily they knocked on the door, you know, because if I'd been alone, I don't think I would have made it through, you know. So I'd already had 2 bottles of brandy that weekend. So I wasn't physically or emotionally in the state I was in. And luckily I started a new job with a dealership in Tunbridge a few days later. So I was able to earn money and then she started coming after me for money. I hadn't been working for years. I suddenly got a job. And then CMS started their stuff. They, instead of using my previous year, where I'd only earned 3.5 a year, they went back a year. So then I had to move into a caravan without any running water and then just to survive really financially for a while because I had to pay my leave to remain.
Grant, can you,
So,
sorry, Grant, I lost you there for a second. Could you please tell me again what happened when you were connected to the CMS? Can you start from there again, please?
yeah, she started pursuing me. This is about 6 months after the breakup, insisting she needed money. And the CMS used a previous year's calculation, like way back, a year or two back, instead of the last year when I'd earned a lot less. I mean, a calculation on 3,500 a year would be barely £50 a month, you know.
Yeah.
But they used previous year, which I ended up paying about 240, 250, you know. Then I said to her, listen, I can't afford that. So she immediately put me on collect and pay because she would get more money.
Yeah.
So I ended up paying 300 odd a month. And I was only bringing
How were you coping with that? How were you coping with that amount of money per month then?
I was earning, my take home pay was about 1,300 a month.
Right.
So 13, I was living in a caravan. I had a debt to pay off with a Marks and Spencer's, I think. It's a few £100 a month. So and then I had to pay for my leave to remain because that was 6 months from then. I had to pay for that. So I had to scrimp and, you know, couldn't really do anything. I was very careful. I had to shop at Aldi's and Lidl's. I went mostly vegan because meat was a lot more expensive. But I wasn't in a great state because I'd go to work and I'd sit on my phone whenever I had time because I mentally couldn't cope. I was agoraphobic. I couldn't cope with people being around me.
Yeah.
So I'd have conversations, then isolate myself, you know, because I couldn't deal with it, you know. And it took me months and months of working through that and healing and trying to, you know, going for therapy once a week. And it was a tough time. It was really, and every day I'd have to sit down and say, okay, I need to just not take my life today. Just today. We'll deal with tomorrow, just today.
Just taking it as a day as it comes, just doing just trying to survive that day. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all I did, one day at a time. I'm still at you know, I just tried to, I just wanted to cope, you know, and then obviously one court case after another, accusations, and then unfortunately we got a CAFCAS officer that was corrupt.
Yeah.
We got a caseworker that just took her side, and eventually, as I've done more on a video, she seemed to have they had a corrupt relationship. She changed the email address I was emailing on, and now looking back, I realized they were communicating because some of the wording on the email was almost copy and paste. And they would arrive at almost the same time, and they would only come in during the week. And at the time, I couldn't tell what it was. But looking back, and I actually presented in the final hearing, and they brushed it off. But actually, there's evidence to prove they were sharing, because I think my ex was also struggling mentally, but they focused. I did a mental health assessment and proved that it wasn't what she claimed. It wasn't a borderline. But all they did was they used that to delay the case. They bumped the case. It took them almost about 10 months from the time they requested a mental health assessment, which I did within about 6 weeks, month or after that, before we actually got to the hearing.
Yeah.
So, and then there were 5 people sitting on one side of the room and me on my own with mental health issues. And the judge didn't think that was unfair, So that's why my view is that the family courts are institutionally biased. The police, CAFCAS, the family courts, and even CMS are institutionally. When I've approached all of these organizations, they come up with some excuse about how mental health is supposedly looked after, but it's really not. They have nothing in place to deal with people.
You said stuff to me before off camera about how CAFCAS used and the courts use mental health against fathers. What did you mean by that? Can you talk us through that?
Okay, well, after I'd done my court case, after I'd done the final hearing, I did a bit of research. I thought this can't be right, There is a mental health act which they need to be considering, but I think it's the Child Act. There's a Part 3, a vulnerable person. That if a judge notices that you are vulnerable, they should consider you as vulnerable for the case. I was in tears on the stand at 46 years old, and the judge, that was still not enough for the judge to consider me vulnerable. I left court hearing suffering with severe anxiety. It wasn't enough. I did a mental health assessment with the court. I provided evidence. It is not enough to them. And they used that. The thing is, a lot of people, when you split and someone keeps kids, and particularly fathers don't see their children, what happens? They go through a state of mental health. And they start reacting. They're trying to deal with that narcissistic abuse. All this bubbling up feelings are coming out.
Yeah.
They're doing reactive things that are weird stuff.
Yeah.
And they not considering that these people, that men, particular men, but now it's women as well, are struggling mentally in court. And the one thing you need in the court is what? Your state of mind.
Absolutely.
And they're not even applying their own rules. And just to take it further, I did a self-fulfilling sort of assessment of 80 parents. About 70% of them experience a very, very similar problem. I then wrote to the courts and tribunals and I said, what percentage of people go through mental health? What is the state of mental health? They said it's not a business need to identify it. There's no business need for it. Whereas, they have a portion of the act which covers it, but they don't even apply that. So they don't really care, right? Then I got my MP to write to Lord Wilson and Sir McFarlane. Same response. If I wanted to go back to court, they can. They leave it entirely up to judges to make the decision, and the judges aren't using that decision. They've now brought in more training. I wrote to Prince Charles, King Charles. I sense there's been a change in the background. He was quite positive about the fact that he was quite upset with what he read.
Yeah.
And I feel that he's, I think I'm actually currently writing to Prince William as well, because he's more mental health focused. Yeah. But I think the royal family needs to get behind this, because a lot of these institutions are doing this in their name, and it's not fair. And there needs to be a shift in all of these organizations for mental health, because the one thing you need is your mental health, and you don't have it. So yeah, it's not right.
Just before we continue on, we've got about 8 minutes left. I think we've because I don't have the upgrade on Zoom, so you have to come back out and go back in. Are you happy to do that?
Yeah.
So we've got about 8 minutes left, so if you continue talking, and then when it shuts down, we'll just yeah. So as you were saying,
yeah. So let's sort of think. So in my case, they did an assessment. They delayed it. They initially said, "Oh, I'm a danger to the children and my ex." because she made all these accusations. And even when I'd finished the mental health assessment, the caseworker turned around and said, the one that they pay for, she turned around and said, the psychologist never spoke to the mother. So she had the last say on my state of mind, you see. So, yeah, it was, and even the judge didn't turn around and say, well, you can't say something. The judge didn't. The judge was really in on the gig too, Judge Sue in Medway Court. I'm not scared of saying names, because I went back to court and they turned around and said, well, we don't hold people account for breaching court orders. That
No,
was
they
the
don't, do
argument.
they? They're not
No.
really worth the paper that they're printed on, But it does seem to me that if a woman or a mother breaks a court order, there is no repercussion. But if you, as a father, I don't know, don't bring a child back at the right time or go on holiday, and then the likelihood is that the police will be called on you.
Yeah, if you do anything. But the judge in my case arranged the court order in such a way that my ex had control, complete control. There was no, if the mother and I could agree to birthdays, if we could agree to going on holiday. I haven't seen my children for 1 day outside of 6 hours every 2 weeks. And even though she breached, she was like, oh, there's something on, you're not seeing them. They won't be available. She'd go on holiday, but wouldn't rearrange. Well, the children are not available. Okay. Well, that's a breach of the court order. No, we don't really hold people accountable for that. Okay.
Unbelievable.
So, yeah. But the thing is, I've got a son.
Yeah.
And what is going to happen one day when he's in this situation? Or even my daughter, if things change and she gets a spiteful ex that does the same thing. How are we going to deal with that then? So, yeah, I don't know. I'm worried for the future of my own kids.
Yeah, and I think that's what this is about, isn't it? It's about all of us raising awareness about this, is so that we can affect change. We want our children not to be in the same situation, because it's such an acute abuse systemically, and it just tears families apart. And what for? It's for some money. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
And
well,
that needs to end.
Yeah, funny you say that. Because I refuse point blank to pay my ex any child support now, and then CMS have sent me every threatening letter under the sun.
I was going to ask you, how are you managing to do that? How are you managing not to pay child support at all?
Well, they try to increase it on me, because now that I'm not dealing with her, I've got back into a better financial position. I'm working well, working hard, I've got a good reputation again. And
good. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, it's quite positive. But the problem is with that comes better income, you see. And then they've tried to bump me up from £280 to £520. I said, no, she's never asked for a cent more. What I've now worked out is that my daughter had started working, so she wasn't getting the £100 from the government anymore. So she wanted me to fit the bill on the balance. And she just wanted extra money. And it's affected her because she's had to sell her car and so on. But I'm like, no. I insisted in 2021, I said, I'll pay her that amount. She refused to take it. They refused. And then they said to me, but you'd agreed to pay. I said, I never once agreed. And based on that basis, I refused to agree. I never agreed. You forced me to do it, and I've not agreed to pay. And then they sent letter, no, but you've agreed to pay. I said, no, I never agreed. Sorry, point blank, I never. So left it at that. They've threatened me. They've taken me court. They were going to license and passport. You're going to get liability orders, and it's all a fear factor. It's all fear. And they work on the basis that they check your response. That if you react immediately to that letter, they know that you're panicking. Okay. So if you wait a day or two, and you show that you're not really fearful, they then deal with it differently. But whenever I send them a letter, they say, oh, thanks for your documentation. They don't actually respond, but then they'll send me a threatening letter. So eventually I got to the point I realized this is just a game for them, you see. Yeah. So I just kept ignoring, prepared for the liability orders. Well, you can't really argue the liability order. It's just for us to sound off. So what is the point then of getting me a court date then? So they did it twice. So I said, no. Now they're trying to do recovery orders on me, and I'm waiting for that to see. But my son is 18 next month, and he's working. So I'm like, my daughter's already in her 20s. She's 20 now, 21 in February.
So
So
you're nearly all the way through. But what
yeah.
about arrears? Do you think that they'll come after you for arrears?
So let's start with the CMS.
Yeah, CMS.
So my issue with the so my ex started wanting to claim CMS from me. I got to the point I was paying, and then they wanted to, because I'd done financially well, they wanted to bump it up to 520 odd pounds a month. And I said, well, she's never complained. So I said, no, I'll pay what she's paying. And she refused it. Instead of just accepting it, she refused it, and it's financially impacted her. Um, and they then started saying that I'd agreed to pay. And I said, well, I never agreed. And based on that basis, I don't agree to pay, because if I have to agree, I'm not going to agree. And then they kept on trying to send me that you agree letters. And I just, well, refused to accept it. And I sent them letters, and I said, well, what is the legal requirement for me to pay? And they refused to respond to that. They just said, we acknowledge your letter and you're just supposed to pay. So, well, that's not a legal foundation, you know. You give me the laws and the acts. And then, so eventually, with all the pressure, decided to go on contract. Okay. I'm luckily with the industry I'm in, I could actually do that. Went on contract in about August. And to meet IR35, I then found other work outside of my current employment, and I kept on working, but I just manage my money very differently. I keep a limited company, and I distribute my money in different ways with pension, and obviously there's certain costs that the company writes off, so there are ways and means to limit that. But obviously CMS never really looks at things like, they don't look at a fair response. They don't say, okay, well, that's your salary. They try to take every piece into account that they can. And I realize it's just a game for them. It's fear. It's aggression. It's their letters are meant to strike you and make you fear them. They're written in such a way to be fearful. They're templated to be fearful. And if you actually read them,
yeah, go on. And how did you cope with that? Having these threatening letters, these threatening communications coming through to you. How did you cope with that?
I initially really struggled, because there are so many issues in court, and the manipulation of the caseworkers and all of that really had already affected me. I wasn't seeing my kids, and their view of me was quite affected. My reputation was ruined. There was already mentally a lot that was affecting me. Yeah. And then obviously now getting these threatening letters, they're threatening to take my license and my passport and etc. And I panicked. Yeah. I absolutely panicked. I became quite suicidal about it. I thought my life was ruined. Yeah. But then I read in their letters, and then I've realized, because if you read at the top of the letters, they threaten you with action. Yeah. And they are so adamant to try to force you. They threaten you again. And I've learned in life, when people threaten you more than twice in a letter, they have fears as well, And I realized that their way they've obviously put their letters together are not actually that serious. It's just to make you scared and make you panic, So once I'd figured that out, I started realizing the game that they were playing, and I started playing the game. They send me letters, and I'll say, thank you for your documentation, like they say to me. And I'd respond in the way, and I'd ask them for legal evidence to prove it, and I get none. And then they got love.
You started to fight back, basically. You started to put your foot down and start to fight back a little bit.
Yeah, I said, no, you can't treat me like I said. I offered you a deal. You turned it down. You said I agreed. I didn't agree. No contract in the world is based, unless you agree to pay someone. You can't force someone to do something and then turn around and say you agreed. It doesn't work like that. No. That's not law, you know. So they know, I think they know they don't have much of a foundation to work on. And they've tried. And even when I went for liability was a waste of time. I went into court. Actually, I don't know if I told you this. I went into court, and on the day at 12:30 in the afternoon in Brighton Court, there were 62 people for the exact same time at 12:30 for one court for liability orders.
Just rubber stamping. Yes. Just rubber stamping.
What was the point?
Absolute racket. Rubber stamping, keeping people in servitude. Yeah. And
magistrates who are as powerless as anything. They won't question that. Even they said to me, we're not here to question the calculation. So you have to go through this biased tribunal approach, which is not going to serve you They're just trying to get you to agree to pay. That's all they're trying to do. Because in any debt recovery, they need your agreement. They
They
have
need
to have
you
your
to sign
agreement.
something, don't they? They need that. Yeah.
They need you to admit that you owe the debt. You see, then they can always go to any court, even the high court, and say, well, he admitted he owed the debt and he owes it to us.
So that's the thing.
Like,
Don't
okay,
admit to a debt that you don't believe is yours at all. Never agree to
yeah,
it. Never sign anything that you don't believe is
yeah,
rightfully to be signed.
yeah. So I've taken a bit of a risky path. I mean, they're trying to do recoveries. You know, they keep threatening. My child is 18 soon, and my youngest is 18. So I think they're running out of time. You know, they might still try coming after me for other things that aren't concerns, you know. But, you know, I've sort of resigned myself to the fact that I'll deal with it when they take that step. You know, I'm not going to panic and fear.
I'm interested in how you know, there are thousands upon thousands of fathers out there who are, you know, they've gone through something really similar to you, and their mental health is struggling. And you've obviously been through a journey where your mental health was at rock bottom, through to the allegations, through how Kafkas and family courts and even CMS have dealt with you. But you were a successful individual when you were married, and now you are being successful again. How have you gone from being successful to being broken to being successful again? What's the magic recipe or the catalyst for that then?
Well, it's definitely, I think, as I said earlier, you've got to take one day at a time. You have to deal with what's in front of you right now, and try to not worry about the negatives, because those thoughts will come in. The fear, the anxiety, you've really got to just, if you're going to be happy right now, be happy. You know, don't panic. If the thing is, someone said read a statement years ago that worry is like a rocking chair, it gets you absolutely nowhere.
Yeah, it robs you of the peace.
And
if you worry about tomorrow,
absolutely,
it robs you of the peace and the happiness of today. Yeah.
yeah. So I would keep looking for small moments of happiness. You know, things with relationships, friendships. I saw a flower on the side of the road. My car drove well today. You know, I woke up and the sun was shining through the window, and I'd stand and just enjoy the sun for a minute or two. Because right now in that moment, I'm going to enjoy that moment. You know, I can't, you know, I'd have a cup of coffee and I'd take a minute or two and I just drop my shoulders and breathe and just, I'm having my coffee now. You know, that's what I'm doing right now. The world can just do what it wants.
A little moment here and there of peace, a little bit moment where you can have a breath and recognize that you're okay, and it's not gonna swallow you up. Yeah.
I mean, my depression was so bad I didn't get up until 4, and eventually I started. If you really are depressed, my plan with depression was, I said, okay, goal 1, I had to get out of bed. Just all I had to do that day, and my day was a success. Did that and the thing is, I didn't do it for a month at a time. I did it for roughly 3 weeks, because I didn't want to be defined by that I hadn't done it for a month. I never set a particular time until I felt ready to move forward, because my depression was based on feeling. I moved forward to the next step. I said, okay, I have to be out of bed by 12. Now, this is already 3 weeks in, and all I am is out of bed by 12. You know, then I had to be, so then, okay, well, my day was a success. I was out by bed. Did that for 3 weeks. So 6 weeks in, all I've done is get out of bed by 12 o'clock. But I'm still better off than I was 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Then it was, okay, I have to be out of bed by 12, and I had to make myself a pot of coffee. Not a very big goal, but guess what? It meant that I slowly built on it. And as I did, I said, okay, if I am at 12 and I needed to go for a walk, have a coffee and go for a walk. I'm now 3 months in, and all I'm doing is getting out of bed, having a coffee, and going for a walk. You know, it's not a lot to achieve in a day, but the fact is that every day I felt like I was achieving, and I just kept on adding more and adding more, and got in earlier. And then, you know, I had to work, you know. So then I'm like, okay, now I need to be out of bed by 7 or so, whatever time it was. Okay, just try get to work for the day and just try and manage, you know. And I, you know, things kept on coming at me, and I just dealt with it one thing at a time. And then when I could take those moments, I took those moments. And then when I had anxiety or depression, I didn't deny I had it. I'd take my time out and let the depression be. Wouldn't let the thoughts get on top of me. Anxiety always really rattled me, but I just take and I'd go to bed anxious or depressed, or whatever, but then I just deal with it the next day, you know, do whatever I could. And eventually, you know, even with this whole CMS thing, I mean, I've been very anxious and very upset, but I've just tried to just say, okay, I can't deal with it all right now. I'll deal with what I can deal with. I do gaming in the evening. Eventually, I started with my PC.
I hid under the bed. I got remarried, and the CMS thing just completely overwhelmed me. I just wouldn't. Every time a letter would come through the door, I wouldn't open it. I just didn't want to. I didn't want to read it. I had to get other people in my family to read it because it was just so oppressive. I've been through so much myself with the family courts and false allegations. I couldn't cope with it. I couldn't process it. And it took me a long time to be able to come to a place where I can read them and face the CMS. And now I've started a channel in order so that we can actually challenge it, so that we can actually make people aware of what their tactics are, because it's horrifying. I was a person who didn't really ever deal with anxiety, but I've never felt so much anxiety in all my life. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, you've been through a lot.
Yeah.
So it's not a fair thing. And the thing is, what worries me is there's a lot of married men like I was, and single men who don't see this. They don't know. They don't see. They will think it's going to be rosy until your ex realizes when she split up with you, she doesn't have your financial, physical backing anymore. She becomes bitter and angry because now she has to deal with everything herself financially. She's a few £100 a month short, and you got to pick up the bill. Well, no, it's not how it works. And I feel sad for guys on 100 grand a year. 12% on one child, 15% on another. Calculated pre-tax, paid after tax. So it's anywhere from 25 to 30% of your post income.
It's gross. I mean, it's unbelievable. What normal setting do you have where a father, is working and from his salary provides out of gross? Nobody provides out of gross. Yeah. So it's a stealth tax.
It is. It's 25%. After divorce, any married man now knows that after divorce, you're going to be paying your ex 25% of your income. But like, what? Well, how am I going to live? Well, that's not very.
They don't care. They don't even ask. They don't even think about, the fact that you're separated and you've got to provide for yourself, have a roof over your house, over yourself. You've got to be able to pay for your petrol, your car, whatever you need to get to work, etc. Food to eat, gas, electric. None of that is important. All that matters is you've got to pay this amount for that child. It's basically alimony, and it's a stealth tax. And actually, was it? How much does that? It's 4%. How much does it actually get to the mother? Who knows?
Yeah. Well, if you look at the costs, I mean, a lot of people said they can't come out on child maintenance. Even a guy earning, say, 40 grand a year, well, let's take the average income, it's about 33, 35, say 35 a year, you're still paying close to £500. I think for two kids would be close to £500, 400 and something pounds a month, I think it is. Thinking about two children in the modern day, the government is already paying 90 odd pounds each. It's almost £200 per child. So you're getting 400 something plus from the ex, plus 200. That's £650. Now, if two parents split, you would have to pay for a house to see your children. Rental of that house, the room of that house, is not your ex's responsibility. It is your responsibility, it's your house, or you do not see your children. Okay, so you want to have two kids or even one, you need to have a room for them at a certain age. That is your cost. That is not their ex's cost. Mm-hmm. The only costs that really matter is when And even the food costs in your house is not their cost, it is yours. It is the split costs between the parents. But the way they've set up CMS is that it's there to fund parents, and it shouldn't be. It's there to fund the child. And you say, okay, well, I have the child the most. Yes, while you have them, you should pay for them. You chose that.
Absolutely, it should be. I believe that it should be standardized so that it's the same amount of money per child throughout the whole country, no matter how much you earn. Apart from if you're on benefits, obviously there'd be there would be a lower rate, but it should be the same, because if it's child support should be a particular rate. It shouldn't be like an alimony. Well, here it's saying it's 12% for one, 16% for two children, and it's 19% for three. And the reality is that fathers are paying twice. So they pay a percentage for their children so that the mothers can look after the children. But then when the children come to them, if they actually do see the child, they're paying again. That's the experience that I've had. I paid twice. I paid for the mother to look after my son, and then when my son's here, I pay for those things again. I pay for the travel. Yeah. I pay for the holidays. I pay for the clothing, the food, the toys, all of these things. So, and most fathers out there do want to provide something for their children. So they will go out their way and they will go without things so that they can provide for their children. And having to pay twice, I think it's wicked, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, that's why I did create the shared care calculator, to create a different model. But I actually have recently come up with another plan. I think actually.
Yeah, tell everybody about that. Tell everybody about how you came to develop that, because I've seen that, and it's actually really, really good. So, how about sharing a bit more about that? Yeah.
Yeah. So the shared care calculator basically it takes both parents' incomes into account. Okay, which you should do when you're raising a child, because even if you're on a low income, one's on low, one's high, it balances it out as a gross income across both of you, okay, which is really for the interest of the child. It then says, right, who has what percentage share, okay? So initially it would start out and it will say, okay, based on the gross, if we work at a certain cost of the child, so we look at each parent's expenses, we combine that as well. We look, there's a gross cost to look after the child. What percentage would you pay of that gross cost? How much do you earn, and what percentage of that should you pay based on your income? Okay, Paul, you still there? Okay. So what percentage should you pay based on your income? Which is a fairer calculation. It's designed to be a fairer. So if you're earning less and seeing the children less, you pay less. How it works.
Oh yeah, because that way, that should be the way round. Because if you're, I would imagine that there are lots of mothers out there when they leave the father or they take over the property, they're actually more likely. I think the statistics are they become more wealthy. They become more wealthy through CMS, through potentially having another partner, etc. That also they gain property as well, and any finances from there. So the likelihood is that when a woman separates from a man, she's going to become more financially secure, whereas the man becomes less financially secure.
Well, yeah, then that's partly why I designed the share care calculator, because if parents keep saying, I'm trying to work, I'm trying to co-parent. Okay, if you're co-parenting, do a fair calculation. Okay. If you're not deliberately holding the children, then you'll do the calculation and you'll say, right, it's fair. I have the kids, even if I'm earning less and I have the kids more, I still get a bit extra money. But the children are still my responsibility. It doesn't take into account rental properties, because that's not got to do with it. That's not what it's about, really. Unless you both agree that's a cost you're going to cover. It works on this. We are adults. We are mature. We are able to, like we had in the marriage, we can have a conversation about money. When people don't want to talk about money, it's not within their interest. Either they're earning too much and don't want to share it, or they're not earning enough and too embarrassed to say anything, so they'd rather just take whatever they can from you. when
Yeah,
people
because
are adults.
then it becomes parallel parenting rather than co-parenting. If you're in a situation where it's entirely hostile and you're going through the child support maintenance system, especially if it's a narcissist, it's parallel parenting. It's not joint parenting, and I totally agree with you. If we are evolved individuals, we should be able to have a discussion about joint parenting, even if you're not together.
Yeah. And one of my recent thoughts is that, okay, when parents split up, maybe we enforce child support for a year. But if those parents are not able to share custody and at least come to a more reasonable model where they can agree, then that child support should stop. That parent has decided to use the child as a weapon of income. It should not be allowed. They should be stopped. So there are ways and means to solve this problem. They don't want to solve it because of the money they make of it and who it
The
really
financial incentive is absolutely off the scale. They're making so much money off it. Why would they stop it?
Yeah. So there's no, it's a big money game. People think it's the courts that make money. If you're applying as a litigant person, yes, it's a £300. I don't think. Now, someone said there's maybe 10,000 people. It's not that many people going to court, I think. I don't believe it's that many, but maybe I'm wrong. But I think there's money in it, but they already get paid through taxes and that already. So that's not reasonable why it is. But yeah, it's just the whole structure from, if you can't see your kids, it is now within someone's financial interest to refuse contact, which damages the child. So we're doing this thing where we're giving people laws to be able to refuse contact. The long term is that children are ending up in mental institutions and prisons, which is costing us as taxpayers. So
absolutely,
the government has
absolutely. The statistics are that if you are brought up in a single parent family, if you're brought up in a single mother family, the likelihood of you going to prison is quite high. Because the reality is that you need to have two parents to be able to have a balanced child or children. What fathers bring into a family is that if you want to have a child that does well educationally, socially, emotionally, and is a balanced child, you need to have a father in that child's life. If it's just a single mother, the likelihood is they're going to have behavioral issues, and they won't engage very well in education. Socially, they will do less well. And there is a high propensity for being imprisoned because of it. So families being torn apart through the CMS and the family courts, it's a destruction of society.
Yeah, it is. I agree. I mean, I don't understand why the courts don't stay right. Because the thing is, what happened was if one parent takes the children, the court don't want to interfere with that. They come up with this excuse that we don't want to disrupt the children. Children are more flexible than adults.
Oh, absolutely.
They have a lot less.
Oh, absolutely.
They can sleep on a restaurant floor and in the back of a car. They're very flexible, So they why didn't they just have it that they stay with one parent 6 months and then 6 months with the other one, and then see who does the most refusal of contact, and then guess what? We then decide based on that who then is who is the more senior parent, resident parent, the one who puts less issues on the children. You see, but we don't have that sort of thinking. What we do is we think of it from a law basis, and we don't think about it. I'm not saying it's a great thing, but I mean, even courts should be people sitting around a couch on a table or something having a discussion, not these big benches everywhere. And
it's almost
the way
like
designed it.
It's almost, even though it's family court and it's not criminal, it treats the parents like they are criminals, especially if you're a father.
Yeah.
You're a criminal. Your relationship broke down. It may or may not be your fault. You may or may not have responsibility within that. But now you are in our clutches. You are now a criminal father. You are a vagrant father now. Now we can go after you financially. That's backward, isn't it? That's entirely. How would you describe that?
It's this whole win-loss idea. I went to court and I won custody. It's the wrong term to put. In fact, in the UK, when we talk about contact, that is an awful term. What you're implying with the word contact is that one person has the children, the other one he sees them occasionally.
Exactly. One is
That's
the parent,
awful.
and the other one just is the fun weekend.
Yeah,
Yeah. When in
it's
actual fact,
awfully labeled.
yeah.
That is an awful label. The reality is the government has got to look at this whole thing from beginning to end and say, look, it's not working for parents. We can solve with whatever the 1,000, whether it's 300 or 3,000 suicides a year from court issues with particularly men. Women are doing it too now. There are really good moms out there. Let me tell you, there
Yeah,
are
there
really,
are.
really good
Yeah, there
mothers.
really are. There are some fantastic
Yeah.
parents out there. We want to celebrate the good parents, the good mothers, and the good
the
fathers. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, they are really, really good. I mean, so it's an issue, but it's just that because of the whole, approach towards feminism and equality and whatever, we've sidelined. Like there was recently an issue in Parliament where they tried to raise that we need to talk about men's rights, and it was challenged, by the only woman in the room, and I can't remember who it was, but it's just that there's a lack of understanding that men are struggling, but yet somehow we manage to be committing suicide. Yet we are the foundation of
It's a
society.
joke. It's become a joke. If you talk about men's issues, it's like somehow you must be neglecting females' issues. No, men and women both live life, and there are struggles within life, and they're going to have different things that affect them just because of their experience of being male or female. I don't see how it can only be one conversation in society. Surely it could be two. Surely there could be the understanding that men have they have their issues as well. I don't understand why it's so blinkered.
Yeah, it always makes me think of what is to happen in my relationship. There was an expectation of how I needed to behave, but no one told me. Like,
yeah.
Like, okay, I'm not behaving correctly, but you didn't tell me this was bad. Okay, fine. Like, so it doesn't make sense. There's no logic to it. It's like, if you want us to behave a certain way, tell us. If we're not behaving the way, correct us. But if you don't tell us and we behave a certain way, you can't tell us we're wrong.
Well, you should just know. You should just know exactly what you should be doing or how you should be behaving.
Exactly.
Just mental messages.
You just know. Just know. But anyways, there's the thing is, and it's a global thing. The US, Australia, US is worse in many ways than on men. Awful on men.
Yeah.
Australia is quite difficult to men. The fact the world needs to get to the point where it realizes that a father in a child's life is more beneficial for a child. I'll give you another example.
Globally, as in global development, development.
Yes.
Is far better in terms if a man is in the family, in the house.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
I'll give you an example. My son is a football player, and he's really talented. He's a really good little kid, and we won. I think the second year that I coached them, I think it was the second year, we won a trophy. We won the World Kent League. We split up. Mike and I created another football club for him. We split up. That fell apart. He then stopped playing football, and she didn't push it. You see. And she obviously didn't really want me to spend time with him because then he wanted to connect. And he's tried to move in with me a few times, and it's always been an issue. He has not really played over the last few years, joined a team and done very well. So what I had done in the interim, I went to another football team and I said, let me help you. Let me help with this team, thinking that he might join him. She wouldn't let me be there when he did his trial. And then he didn't want to play, you see. And I think partly because I wasn't there. That team that I coached has won 4 trophies in the last 4 years.
Wow.
Okay. He's not played, and his teams have initially were second from the bottom and have now middle tiered on the league. 4 trophies he's not had in his life. The confidence that all the children in our club and that team are going for degrees. Every one of them. He's going to probably do biological, but the negative benefit that has had, the negative loss versus the benefit he would have had is the light and day. But we somehow hail these situations that because she made an accusation and I'm supposedly, to the point that my sister even believes her.
Yeah.
So it's awful.
And that's how pervasive it is, this narcissistic abuse. It doesn't just affect you. it affects the people around you because of the flying monkey thing. You know, I've got friends who I'm speaking to, you know, privately, and yet they're being forced out of their own houses, and there's accusations, and it's kind of like infiltrated the whole family. They all don't believe the men. They don't believe the man, and it's just a pervasive, narcissistic, toxic lying, and it just seems to just destroy everything it touches. It's sickening.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're probably on a sort of, to a point where we finish. But one of the things that really hit me lately is I spent 14 years with someone, and I took with 2 children. I helped raise them, I found them, I was there for them. I mean, there were times when I had to bail my daughter out. She almost got kicked out of university. I bailed her out. I bought a car for her. I helped her, I moved them to another country and helped them at a place for them all to arrive to be. After all that effort, there's not been one moment where my ex has sat down and said, look, he's been great to us, great to children that weren't his. Okay. He's done an amazing job. Not perfectly, but he's put his heart into it all and said he's struggling with mental health. Let's go support him. Never one call, never one SMS. How are you doing today? Not one. And those stepdaughters don't talk to me either, although 25, 26 years old, they both bought properties, they're both degreed. If my influence was that bad, why are they such educated individuals and why have they done so well?
Exactly.
So anyway, so the thing is, yeah, we don't get appreciated.
No, but we've got a minute and a half to go. So what I'd like to do is to talk about Chats for Drinks. Tell me about that. Yeah. Tell me how that's going.
Well, I was sort of trying to find a name, and I thought I could make it where I could eventually have conversations with people, much like you are doing. I mean, you have a lot more confidence than I did want to actually maybe name it "Don't React, Think," because that's the one thing that had helped me the most. But Chats for Drinks, I think, was very just to help people and talk about. I think get to the raw nature. People don't understand PA, they don't understand Kafkas, and they don't. A lot of people all say the same thing, even on TikTok channels and that. I just wanted to say things that were different that help people. That's all I want to do. Is my story helps them. They can identify and use that information. That's all I want to do.
Well, there you go. Yeah, there you have it, everybody. So Chats for Drinks, it's doing very well. 70, 80,000 views on some of these videos. They're absolutely excellent, full of information that's going to help you out. But for now, we're going to say goodbye, and thank you very much, Grant. Thanks for your time, and thanks for everything that you've shared today. It's been absolutely excellent talking to you, and I'll speak to you soon.
You're amazing, Paul. Thanks so much.
You too, mate. You too. God bless you. See you later, mate. Bye.
You too. Bye. Bye.